Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Productions channel here at YouTube. And of course we are going to be reviewing, or at least me, going to be reviewing a album. I wanted to review this album when it was, the day before it was released or the day that was released. I want to review it around that time, but couldn't. Either due to downloading, which I didn't really feel like downloading the album. That, and also YouTube. So here we are, finally, due to my brother, who borrowed me a copy. Yes. So I finally got around to listen to it. This, of course, is Diamond Head's newest album. Of course, Diamond Head, classic new wave of British heavy metal band. Definitely one of the just a classic band. That's all you probably need to know. Definitely, probably known for influencing Metallica. Of course, the track "Am I Evil?", "Lightning to the Nations," "Borrowed Time." It's just a classic band. That can be seen as probably one of the bigger new wave of British heavy metal bands, but at times maybe not as big. Actually, you know what? They probably are definitely pretty big because of their guitarist Brian Tatler has also been in documentaries on the new wave of British heavy metal scene. Sam Dunn's Metal Evolution, or British metal or something like that. So definitely one of the bigger bands. And so let me just get to it. The album, the thing is, it's not just the reason why I didn't want to download it or anything like that. I kind of did want to listen to the album because I wanted to review it around April 22nd, which was the date that it was released. Yeah, so it's been 2 months. Hearing all the reviews on some of the later Diamond Head albums, because I never really got to really venture out of Canterbury or Santabury, whatever the album tends to be pronounced as, which was a very experimental album. And that just seems to be what Diamond Head was kind of going for, kind of wanting to break the commercial sales within bands like Def Leppard and Iron Maiden, or such of these bands were breaking commercial ground. Even Judas Priest and Accept, Scorpions, all these bands were breaking some commercial ground. And Diamond Head wanted to pretty much, break that ground, but couldn't. And who knows, it probably was due to them trying to go for a more radio-friendly or very experimental sound, which they did get. They did get compared to, they were looked as one of the new Led Zeppelin, which Led Zeppelin were indeed, in fact, a very experimental band. So Diamond Head sure definitely made something that was very, something very experimental. But I think the experimentation that they really took with wasn't something that really benefited them. Because even after Canterbury, there was an unreleased album. Yes, there was an unreleased album. And the sound of it, if you could find the track on YouTube, which it is on YouTube, they really wanted to make the next Hot Space. Yes. God, no. So really, that's pretty much where Brian Tatler's head was in at that point, and of course he finally, took his head out of that headspace, and finally, and of course I didn't hear the album as well, since again I didn't really listen to post Canterbury albums. This is probably the only post Canterbury album, but Death in Progress, which was the last sound that features Sean Harris on vocals. After that, They went on, released a few more stuff in the 2000s. Still hearing that they were very experimental, getting a new guy named Nick Tart. Then there was also What's in Your Head, which was the last album that they had released prior to this one, which was released in 2007, which I did know of, but never really listened to it because of, if I did, it probably didn't really leave much of an impression. So here we are in 2016, and they, of course, I think it was like in 2014, Nick Tart gets replaced by Rasmus Bom Anderson, new guy. And of course, let's also talk about the drummer, who was Karl Wilcox, who was from another new wave of British heavy metal band by the name of Requiem. Very obscure band, only released like a demo and a 7-inch. So, there's that. But here we are, and really did not know if the band was gonna, go for a more experimental sound. Were they gonna go? Again, what was going through my head is, are they just gonna go for just a hard rock sound? Which is fine. It's fine to go for a more hard rock sound since a lot of new wave of British heavy metal bands, their sound was very much rooted within that 70s hard rock. Just it was more amped up, more ambitious, more just a little more metallic and just in your face than most 70s hard rock bands. But so let's definitely get into it. Self-titled album. I'm a little surprised. Again, I haven't heard a whole lot of their albums after Canterbury, but this is surprisingly good. There is not a whole lot of experimentation on this album. No, this band, Brian Tatler just decided to go back to the sound of Lightning to the Nations and Borrowed Time. This is pretty much, actually, it's kind of a mixture of the two. It's like if you decide to mix the very raw, loose nature of Lightning to the Nations, but mixed with the very melodic, sort of very kind of catchy, a little, I guess, kind of catchy in some ways a little, but just kind of more of that melodic sort of sound of Borrowed Time, just minus the progressive sort of epic song lengths. It's just a little more simpler, but yet it seems to mix and blend the styles of Borrowed Time and Lightning to the Nations. Like the track Shout the Devil, which is not to be confused with the Motley Crue track, is a barn burner. This track immediately just, to me, it just reminds you of like It's Electric, or kind of like that, or even just the very speedness of Helpless. This just combines that, or even the track Lightning to the Nations just combines that. Then you also have Wizard Sleeve, just another good track. Again, definitely close to, the very speed riffing, but still is good. Set My Soul on Fire. God damn, another slow but really good track. Our Time Is Now, another really good track. Bones, which is also the track that kicks off the album. Just another good way. It's just a rockin' album, at least from start to finish. Then we also, of course, our Speed. But let's also address the track Blood on My Hands. Now, this track, probably this is the only track on this album that really harkens back to Borrowed Time. Just with its riffage. The way this sounds like it could have literally fit on Borrowed Time. This really could have just fit right in between those songs. And it would have rounded it up to probably around 8 tracks, and it still would have not hurt the album. This is just a good track. And that's the only one thing that just comes to mind by listening to this track. It's just think of Borrowed Time. And that's really what you want to kind of expect as well from Diamond Head. You want to expect that first two albums. And this track would have not fit very well on Light to the Nations. It would have definitely fit well within the very melodic nature of Borrowed Time. And then, of course, let's also talk about Silence. Definitely probably the only track that really kind of goes for more experimentation sort of track, because it's very melodic. Very, very melodic. But is it still good? Indeed, it still retains some of that real good classic rock feeling to it, but it just still has a little bit of experimentation to it. Really, from start to finish, really a solid album, and with each listen, the album just seems to get better. If anyone who ends up feeling that the album just feels raw, that it should have a better producer, you forget that Diamond Head's first album wasn't produced by some big producer. No, it was pretty much self-produced. So in a way, I kind of get where they wanted to go with this album. They wanted to go for more of that self-produced sound like they did with Lightning to the Nations. And Light to the Nations, probably the most popular self-produced album. So really, I don't understand why there are even people bringing that up. Maybe because they just expect a lot of that big produced sound, which I've heard a whole lot of big produced sounds, within the modern times, and it really can take away something from the album. It can take away the charm of an album. And here, self-produced, there's some charm to it. So really, if this album was overproduced, it probably would have sounded like crap. So, but let's also even talk about new singer Rasmus Bom Anderson. This guy has a good voice. If anything, he probably would not rival Sean Harris, but he fits this music well. The guy literally is a rock singer. Just a very powerful voice, if anything. The guy just, at times, knows where to hit certain notes. Maybe on the track he might get a little too, kind of a little indulgent a bit, self-indulgent. But he still pulls off a good performance on this album. Just I've never heard Nick Tart sing. I've heard some people say he wasn't bad. But I think, if anything, if I did listen to that material, I probably would just think that maybe Nick Tart probably is just in maybe the wrong, playing the wrong style of music. Because again, and with this guy, I think he's just been given the right opportunity to show off the pipes. And this guy, he's definitely fits this type of music. He's just got a really good voice. That's all I gotta say. So, all in all, probably not really that. Probably not their greatest album, because again, it's definitely hard to rival albums such as Lightning to the Nations and Borrowed Time. But here, this is probably the best album that they've released in a long time, and at least when it comes to certain fans of this band, it's probably the best that they've done in a long time. It's a return to form, and I guess Brian Tatler's going to continue with the whole, playing, that heavy style of hard rock and heavy metal. This is just a solid album. If you haven't even heard this album yet, I definitely recommend checking it out. But if you have heard this album, what are your thoughts? If you have any thoughts, you can post your comments down below. But let's definitely get to the score. I would probably give it... I almost feel like I want to give it a 8.5. Because while it's a solid album, I wouldn't say too great. But it's definitely a solid album. There is some parts where it kind of gets a little off. Like let's talk about Diamonds for a bit. Diamonds is also a very kind of very melodic track, still rock, but at times it's probably the weakest track on the album in my opinion. But it doesn't hurt the album. To be quite honest, this album doesn't have a whole lot of weak parts. If anything, the sound doesn't have a whole lot that hurts it. If anything, it just seems to be a consistent album, if you ask me. It's a very consistent album from start to finish, so an 8.5 seems to be the right score for it, if you ask me. So it's a very consistent album from start to finish. Right from track 1 to track 11, it seems to be very consistent, and it flows very well. So, until then, this is Heavy Thrasher saying I'm out. And I'll see you later.